sun feeds the plants. It feeds the entire earth, no matter how good the soil, no matter how many nutrients you give it. Without the sun, the plant won't grow. And consequently, I feel that unless we are outdoors with that connection, to that energy, to the sun, to the rainbow, which is the exact same color, frequency as each chakra of our body. Many people aren't aware of that. The connection to this universal God force energy that somehow got lost along the way when we came indoors. Mm-hmm. If we concentrate more on being that and that love frequency, the rest in time, I think, will, the same as energy work, come to a place of balance. It has to, because we are, being the change here daily. And so that's my take on most of these things that are not created or a part of the earth. I kind of like the expression, you think God got it wrong. I think it was right in the first place, and the more that man changes it, not to say that we won't use everything that's here with respect, but the more that we change it, the places that you go where the indigenous people live or the indigenous forests, the animals and the forest and the earth thrive beautifully in harmony. It doesn't get cancer. It's not sick. It doesn't create an ecosystem of imbalance where, certain bugs or animals are eliminating others. It contains its balance in love. Whereas when we change it, as we have, you can see what's happened to the point that we have to use more and more, or so they feel, to more of an imbalance along the way, in a way of trying to maintain, the creation that they have created at this time, as opposed to realizing that we have to go back to what we were.
We're going to take a break here in just a minute, but as a teaser for when we come back, I want to ask you a couple of things, and maybe you can kind of collect your thoughts. One thing I want to ask you about is genetically modified foods and how that impacts or interferes with a person's individual energy field. And then I was watching something on, I think, the H2 channel this weekend, and they were talking about these I'm going to say quotes. I'm doing the little air quotes now with my fingers. The healing nanobots that they inject into people's bodies, and they just stay there forever. And yeah, they work really well, maybe to correct whatever was going wrong in the first place, but they stay there. And you didn't come into this world with a nanobot, so I'm wondering if that had something to do. I mean, if it's going to be good for you in the long run to have those there, I don't think that you can get rid of them. And then I want to talk some more about pets. You're listening to Epic Voyages on InceptionRadioNetwork.com. Our guest tonight is Constantina Vaseliades, and she is, don't want to embarrass you, Constantina, but an expert in the use of energy in healing practices, and that includes people and animals. So if there's any animal lovers out there, you need to be listening and think about calling in. When we come back, our phone line will be open at 888-919-2355, and we'll take some phone calls. So let's take about a 4-minute break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody, to Epic Voyages on the InceptionRadioNetwork.com online program. Tonight, we're talking to Constantina Vaseliades, and a holistic health educator, but also someone who is well practiced with 30 years more experience in the healing arts that have to do with energy. She's been talking with us now for about an hour about different aspects of a person's individual energy field and how it can affect your health and how you can impact it either through different practices or grounding yourself with earth energy. And this last half hour that we have left, we're going to talk about what kind of impact genetically modified foods might have on your energy field. And two things that I would like to bring up, because I'm the one that's interviewing her, so I'm going to use my prerogative. One would be how it is that I might like a certain kind of music that just puts me into a dreamy state, and someone else likes a kind of music that makes me want to become homicidal when I have to listen to it for more than 10 seconds. And I also want to talk about pets. I want to talk about pets energy, and I want Constantina to talk a little bit about the work she has done with manipulating pets energy and how you find out what it is the pet needs in terms of its energy being impacted. So let's talk about genetically modified foods for a minute first, Constantina. And let me give out the phone number in case anyone wants to call: 888-919-2355. Okay, Constantina, talk about genetically modified foods and how they interact with our personal life force, our energy field.
Well, the biggest studies that I've seen recently online were on corn, and I can't say, that I'm an expert in that area, but as I said before, I would have to look at the fact that it isn't in its natural state. And food in its natural state has been proven to have all the phytochemicals and nutrients needed to create what's called synergy in the body, for your body to be able to absorb and utilize all of that. When we change what was created in its perfect form, I'm not sure that the outcome of what is happening in the body would be the same. And from what I've read, it's actually not the same. That it does have an impact on our DNA and the cellular structure of the body. Long term, I can't say, but I don't want to take that chance. I would rather eat the pure God food. And looking at it from an essence of unconditional love, which is how everything was created, I would look at why we are creating this form of food. In other words, if we were cultivating the earth in the proper manner, not using the poisons, the pesticides, and the chemicals, and creating the whole food to feed the earth, what we're doing, the frequency that we're putting into the earth and into the food, is not a frequency that I want in my body, that I want to resonate at this time. Not to say that, it wouldn't create more food. It does. But if it's making everyone work at a frequency that's not healthy and long-term, affecting the body, mind, and spirit of not only us, but changing the earth, in its natural form, and then having to use more toxins, more pesticides, how much more can you do and expect the food to contain its personal vibratory frequency? And I have seen, lastly, thermography pictures taken, as we spoke before, with infrared to show the frequency around an organic piece of food, a fruit or corn. And it's a beautiful, vibrant, color. And when you take the pictures of the genetically modified food and even inorganic food to an extent, you can see the difference. The difference is huge. It's not in its natural state, its highest frequency that it was.
I live up here out in the country in western New York, up at the Appalachian Ridge in the foothills. I know hunters, and I've been told by more than a couple of hunters that they have seen some deer who will not go around some of the corn crops and eat up here. I mean, they'll walk through and they might kind of nibble at the green part and they just leave it alone. And I've also been told that by someone who does a lot of reading in the chemical aspect of genetically modified food that apparently and I hope I can say this in a way that makes sense, some of the chemicals that they are synthesizing to replace the natural chemical that occurs normally in whatever it is they're doing with the DNA, the spin on those chemicals is reverse to the spin that would be on the normal chemical that would be in that DNA. Does that make sense?
Yes, I have read that, and, I'm watching for future, data in that area. But the fact is, like I said to you, even in its simplest form, for someone that doesn't study this, if you had an opportunity to look up the chemicals and the things that they're using, ask yourself if you would eat that. In anything, not just food, but in anything that you're using. And then, look at that as a way of realizing why, by the time, we're at this place now, that we're having trouble functioning as a society.
It seems ironic to me that we finally, I think in the last 10 or 15 years, have gotten to the point where more and more people understand that preservatives and additives and food dyes and some of the other things that they put in pre-processed food just are not healthy for you, and you shouldn't be eating food with that very often, if at all. And yet, on the other hand, we're changing the actual live growing food from the source so that it may have problems with it worse than the additives and preservatives that we've convinced everyone are not good for them. That seems odd to me because it's a chemical change that's very different from nature. So that just seems ironic.
Right. Well, it's happening all the way around. You either preserve it or you grow it with poisons. I mean, when you look at the whole picture, it's just not a healthy situation. So many places now are, even in different cities, are getting together and growing their own food organically. Or there's places near you, almost every place I've lived has them, where, once a week they'll actually bring it to your home, places that grow it organically, or grow your own, if you can. I mean, you have to realize, if this is being created and it's a good thing, then why aren't we labeling the food? Why don't you have a choice?
That's a very good point.
Whether you want it in your body or not. And like I said before, if you take a natural, I mean, they've even changed an apple to where, saying it's wonderful genetically, where it'll stay, for 3 weeks and not create oxidation. Oxidation is a natural process. And when you take an apple off the tree and you bring it into your home, technically it's only supposed to stay ripe for a certain amount of time because it loses its life force and its energy and its phytonutrients. So it only stands to reason that when you bring the other vegetable or fruit into your home and it'll last for 3 weeks in your fridge, what are you really eating? And why, do you always feel hungry and not satisfied? This is a junk food world that we've been taught that it's okay. And it's just not something that most people maybe are aware of because we've been conditioned to believe that it's okay. And not until we reach a certain point in our lives do we realize, I feel awful, and it's time, to maybe look at ways to correct it. And most people don't think of it in a form. And I'd say the majority of people that came to me for treatments, when I would say to them, I'm bringing, the frequency, we're going to work to bring your vibrational frequency up to a place of optimum health. And now you need to do, if you can, these things to change it. Most people do not stop to think that the diet, what you're putting into the body,